And this is a very loose, very hopefully fun, no matter what your position is, little deal. So thank you very much for being here. We're not going to try and keep you here any longer than we have to be here. I'm going to read a couple of opening remarks that we gave to council. Then Nick's going to give a little abbreviated history of what Colorado Springs is all about, the park stuff that I'm so glad that we went through this exercise because I never knew before. I had no idea he was a history teacher before either, which explains how he got to the bottom of a lot of stuff that very few people, including I think people on council, know about. So thank y'all for being here, and with that, we're going to get on the road. And by the way, it's a loose deal. If you want to get up, go get a bite to eat, want to get a drink, they're bringing pizza into the room for some people that are ordering pizzas. This is not city council, this is not some deal, this is being in a hotel. We're just normal people having a little time talking and visiting, and it's what it is. So y'all feel free to be, loose and wild whatever you want to be. It's all good.
Chill out.
And to chill out. Get to see. So here are the opening remarks we read to council the other day. What would General Palmer do is the theme of this presentation. The Antlers Park C4C Stadium project complies with General Palmer's wishes, in our opinion, in spite of whatever legal opinions might have been written. Better than anything the city has done for the past 40 years. Because as Nick's going to tell you in a minute, for 40 years this has been on the map as a problem deal that they were supposed to fix. And for 40 years they've done nothing. So we're actually trying to do something with it. And they can go, oh gosh, we got to keep whatever. It's ridiculous. It's gone on for 40 years, and it's time for it to stop. To be clear, Palmer's wishes are not sacrosanct. How many people in here think Palmer is God? Can I get a little show of hands? Well, I think he's in this city about as close to it as you can get without being a deity, because he did some amazing things. However, things he put into deeds are not sacrosanct. And the way we know that is there's a lot where the Children's Center is right here, which is a great thing. But guess who? That was donated in 1899 by General Palmer himself while he was alive, not some subsequent deal. He donated that to be a park in perpetuity. That beautiful building we have sitting here as part of the Palmer Center, the Wells Fargo Tower, guess what? That's lot 278. He donated that in 1899 to be a park in perpetuity. Now, there's some argument that they got some playground space around that city thing, but there's no argument that the Wells Fargo Tower is a park. It's not a park. So any notion that there's something sacrosanct about what General Palmer said and that we can't do something different if we get in the mood to it, it makes sense to do, is just absurd. And finally, we wouldn't be able to drink in this room right here, or in our houses, or anywhere else, if it turned out what he said was sacrosanct. Because he put basically a blanket deal that if you've ever bought a piece of property here, you end up having to get a title exception and blah, 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 because he said basically you can't drink anywhere in the whole city. So anyway, what he said is not sacrosanct. However, his intentions were very good. And as it applies to Antlers Park, let me tell you something. We're trying very hard to comply with what we think in 2018 General Palmer would do. We're pretty sure he would not want it to be a heroin park full of feces, trash, crime. We think he'd rather it be something activated for the citizens of Colorado Springs, exactly like what he put the parks there for in the first place. So we're trying to activate Antlers Park. So nothing sacrosanct about him, not him, is things he said and put on deeds. And the city's proven that over and over again. So what we're proposing to do is more in keeping with what we think he would do than what the city has done with the park in the last 40 years since they've known it was a problem. And so, with all due respect to the sideline preservationists, and I assume we have some of those here, I certainly have been, I don't even have a Facebook account, so my wife has had to log me on to how to answer questions on the Gazette, for instance, which is a really interactive group, and I've very much enjoyed interacting with them because at least they're interacting, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. If you're not interacting and you're not part of the conversation, then shame on you. And we've tried to answer between Nick and me every single question that has come up on the Gazette, but I am so illiterate in this particular regard. My wife's got me logged on, and so we have seen preservationists come out of the woodwork that have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know about what I just told you about Wells Fargo Tower. They don't know about the city, the childhood daycare. What's it called? The child care center. They don't know about that, and it turns out that they just don't know about a lot of different things. They don't know that recently the opinions issued, related to, it's all relying upon this thing called the Kyer stipulation that was done in 77, 74, that said, hey, we're going to make sure we guarantee we'll never change anything. They've changed a lot since then. One of the things that was in the Kyer stipulation was North Cheyenne Canyon Park. Well, we don't need, that happens to be where Strawberry Fields is. We don't need to guess that when you want to change something, you can. And by the way, the law actually, we think, allows you to do that. So we're not at odds with that. So to say now all of a sudden you can't change this park is just absurd. And if what you're saying is you think Palmer's wishes, get back to the general principle of what would Palmer do, if you think his wishes are more in keeping with heroin, crime, etc., as opposed to activation and kids being out there throwing frisbees, playing football, having a great time, families doing stuff, then you've lost your mind about who Palmer is. It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry to be this blunt in this, but I was about this blunt in city council. I don't want to be this blunt with this group that can get pizza. That was meant to be fun. Okay, so the city council, as citizens, as trustees of the citizens, we think can give a thumbs up or thumbs down to this deal. And that's all I'm going to say about this, about the backdrop of can we do something with it? The answer is we can do something with it. We should do something with it. It's immoral to not do something with it. And if we're slicing and dicing the law in a way that keeps people in the city from benefiting from what is the moral and right thing when they're in the mood to, depending on what is being proposed, we have to stop that. It is not transparent. It's not a level playing field, and we need to stop that as citizens. And I'm going to ask, even if you hate the park idea, I'm going to ask that you at least stand up and you make your voice known about equally apply the law to all projects that come up from now till the day you die. That's all we're asking out of this whole thing. You ain't going to necessarily support this, though we think you should. We're positive you should support level playing fields and people having equal opportunity. Nick, would you come give us a little short thing for a history lesson? And after he does that, we're going to take as many questions as people have.
Thanks, Perry. Actually, I can't tell you how much I thank you. Just in coming to Colorado Springs and understanding a little bit of the history and a little bit of what it's been and what it can be, I know that you've put a lot, and your business partner, have put a lot into improving the city, so thank you. So I get to talk a little bit about the history of the park, the history of the hotel, and I'll kind of move fairly quickly through the slides. If you're here and if you're passionate about this, you might have already done this, so I don't need to spend a ton of time. But one of the things after spending time going through and learning more about General Palmer, I think the big question is, how do we do this in a way that Palmer would do it? The level, the quality, that's the bigger question, even over activating the park. So we'll just move quickly here, but what would Palmer do? And, yeah. So 1882, big vision. Antlers Park donated to the city of Colorado Springs. So we all know Colorado Springs founded in 1871. Palmer did not donate Antlers Park with the original plat of the city. He donated 2 parks. They were South Park, Alamo Park, where the Pioneers Museum sits today, and also North Park, where Acacia Park sits today. Both have both passive and active uses today, even though they weren't originally designed that way, but that's okay. Antlers Park was given to the city in a different light, and Antlers Park was given to the city after Palmer came up with the idea for the hotel. And obviously being very interested in the depot and connected with the traffic, the foot traffic being generated there from the train center, made a lot of sense to connect it to the hotel. So from day one, the hotel, the depot, and the park are interconnected. All right, Antlers Hotel burns down in 1898, and plans change. This is also just context-wise, you know, the Pikes Peak Gold Rush, gold struck 1890, and so there's a lot of investment, a lot of new money coming into Colorado Springs. So when this thing burns down, and 50 buildings burned down in Colorado Springs, that was on Colorado College's website anyways, there was the opportunity for a lot of new investment, a lot of new ideas. So big vision, 1899. So Antlers Park expanded by adding property. Mr. Sanders referenced a couple of those properties, so Antlers Park grows. Antlers 2 completed. 1904 Mining Valley Park Master Plan complete. 1907 the Parks Board established. And the picture over there is the first Parks Commission report done by Edmund Van Diest, who was Palmer's agent at the time. And as you'll see in the next couple of slides, he integrates Antlers Park with Monument Valley Park. So phase 1, Antlers Park is simply connecting the hotel to the depot. Burns down. Now the opportunity is to actually grow the use, and with this big Monument Valley Park development. So 1899 again, this is just going into detail on those 4 dates that I provided up on that last slide. So this is just the detail of the north half of lots 277 and 278, deeded to the city and to remain forever as a public park. And the Pioneers Museum has a great the story of us online, and also at the Pioneers Museum, and they do these nice map overlays, and so it kind of gives you a good visual of exactly how those blocks lay out. And if you want to look at this in more detail, you can go to the website, the Switchbacks website as well to see this. 1901, version 2 of Antlers Hotel completed. 1904, Monument Valley Master Plan completed. And you can see there's a little zoom in the bottom left of Antlers Park, and $40 million present day investment in the park. And this is the entire park as it laid out. I couldn't find this online, but this is also at the Pioneers Museum. But at the far left, Antlers Park, and in the center there is Colorado College, and at the far right, it goes as far as what is today Boddington Field. At the time, it was a pond. But you can see that Antlers Park in version 2, in connection with Monument Valley Park, they were thought about together. People get off the train, more active uses on the south end of the park, and what you see underneath all of the, you might not be able to read those, but it says station, fountain, basin, baths, Antlers Hotel, art hall, library, annex to hotel. So it just itemizes all these things, these plans, these visions for Monument Valley Park. This wasn't all funded at the time, but this was part of the master plan. This was kind of hopes and dreams at this point. Okay, and this is the Parks Commission report, and just a little more drill down on Antlers Park and the vision for Antlers Park. But a larger park with more active uses. It also references baths in Antlers Park, and it also talks about the north halves of 277, 278. And the result was spectacular. Antlers Hotel version 2 with the park. As you see it, this is a view if you were looking north from Colorado, just outside these walls here. Looking north, you can see the Catholic Church, you can see the library. Pretty spectacular. Yeah, but unfortunately, plans change. And just because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, we pretty quickly glance over, 40 years. But 2 World Wars, Depression, the 500-year flood, leave Monument Valley Park, and Antler's a fraction of what they were. So plans change. And the park begins to shrink. In 1951, the north half of lot 277 is essentially donated for $10. And then in 1964, the city sells part of Antler's Park. This section that we might even be standing in right now, I don't know.
I think it's more or less the Wells Fargo Tower, but it might be where we are.
Mm-hmm. So the park's getting smaller. And this is just to reference back to the original deed to be kept forever as a public park. And this document was located over here in the library. If you haven't been over to the library to look at the special collections area, it's really cool. But there's a lot of stuff like this. So the 1964, the big vision cuts off Antler's Park. So it takes 5 years for Antler's Hotel to be rebuilt, taking its present form next to the Holly Sugar Building, which is First Bank. And the eastern layout cuts off Antler's Park from the rest of the city. So the first time Antler's Park, rather than growing with the hotel as it's done in the first 2 iterations of the hotel, now it begins to shrink. And not only that, but it's completely cut off. So from 71 to present, there's records of the city trying to address the problem of Antler's Park. And a lot of it just has to do with how the Palmer Center was developed. For better or for worse, Antler's Park is cut off by the Palmer Center. It's just a fact. The Palmer Center, so the Wells Fargo Tower, the First State Bank, and the hotel, and then the parking garage. It just cuts it off.
There's no access to the west.
Yep, and there's talk about access. How do we access? How do we make this flow? There's been those conversations since the 70s, and it's a problem. Right, exactly. So our big vision, what if we save the City for Champions downtown projects, and I put a plural on that because the museum is part of this, and save Antler's Park while we're at it. So that's the big vision here. And when we were talking about, you saw the master plan for Monument Valley Park. And this is, an aerial that includes Monument Valley Park. The really cool thing is just what the city has been able to do even further to the south with America the Beautiful Park. And then you can see the little green outline there of where the museum is. What we're proposing really ties in and connects what is originally planned in 1904 with active uses really around kind of the center of this drawing, Monument Valley Park, Antlers Park, and then also with all the new park space that's been created to the south. It draws visitorship, it draws foot traffic, it brings people to the parks, and when you talk to the Parks Department, you ask questions about, why don't we take better care of this stuff? Why aren't these things here? Foot traffic and people actively spending time in parks and actively caring about parks, being drawn to the parks, that helps them to put more investment, put more time into maintaining and improving parks. I think at the end of the day, what our proposal does best is it reinvigorates the park. Monument Valley Park at one time was an incredible place to be, and I think what they call it, Central Park of the West. West of New York City, this was a very special place. And if you spend time in Monument Valley Park today, you might not think that, you might not know that. So I've really enjoyed just the history of it, the love of parks, and it kind of ties in with me, as Perry said, I was a history teacher at one point, and I was on a parks board for about 8 years, so these kind of tie a lot of my passions together. And then we talk about the venue, does it fit? We say, yes, it fits. Would we like more space? Yeah, absolutely, we'd like more space. But at the end of the day, what the project needs, in order to save the $28 million, it needs, several things, but at the end of the day, it needs a team that can execute on $28 million, to take responsibility to meet some of the goals and objectives in the project, and to see it through to successful completion. So there's a couple of different approaches with the event center. This is Plan A, and and then it cycles through. Plan B is to utilize the Oaks property. And then Plan C, there's some other options for the event center in other locations. And I think our position has been, we're open, whatever makes the most sense. That's the plan that we're on board with. But for sure, the outdoor sports element of this project, I tell you, I don't know where else it goes other than Antlers Park. And these are some of the, then we go into some of the utilizations of the park, both the outdoor and the indoor pieces. These are the brands. These were listed a lot of the uses. From day one, when we began talking about this is a park that needs to be open to the public. And on a day in, day out basis, how does this thing get programmed? How does it get used? And the bottom line is we know this needs to be open to the public and utilized to the public and an asset to the public. And then for special events, like when the Switchbacks would play or other teams, what have you, those are special events when it would be blocked out and programmed for those special events, but then reopened back up to the public.
The vast majority.
Which is the vast majority of the time.
Hey, can you make sure they go to the website where all that stuff is? Because that's.
Yeah, so if you go to, you could go to the city's website, but you can also go to the Switchbacks website, and I think it's the first slide that comes up, and you can click on it and kind of go through all this stuff in more detail. You might have already done that, which is great. Thanks for doing that. We're pretty much through a lot of the history. At the end of the day, we're asking to activate the park, move it from passive use, which throughout Monument Valley Park, there's all both passive and active uses. More active uses, we're down closer to the hotel. More passive uses, we're further to the north. We're saying let's activate Antlers Park. It doesn't change ownership of the park. It's historically accurate in context of what Monument Valley Park, what the original vision was, and certainly with America the Beautiful Park. It fixes the need to structurally improve Antlers Park. It's cut off. The structure of the parking lot and how the Palmer Center sits, it's structurally cut off. You don't need any questions. Uses that changed within Monument Valley Park since 1904 master plan became, when funding became available, after floods restructured the park, and when citizens have asked parks to modify uses. So I'm not sure if y'all are interested in delving into some of the feedback that we received from the city attorney. We're fine answering and responding to the entire case. We felt that, and we asked this months ago.
Let's leave that off until they're having an executive session.
Right.
And I think it's up in the air. Bob Cope's here. Thank you very much, Bob, for all your input and support. We'll see how the executive session goes and maybe address things after that.
Awesome. Yeah, we would say Kyer, we would argue Kyer not violated. We'd say we're consistent, historical, and activating. So, yeah, fire away. If you wouldn't mind using the microphone for everybody.
Probably don't need it, but.
And one small thing to point out, come on, please. One small thing to point out that hadn't been pointed out, we left out, is a reason this is a good spot is because my partner and I that own the Antlers, we have a loading dock infrastructure that goes all the way from one street over. It covers the whole block. It's a covered loading zone. And for all of these stadiums, the nature of whether it's a busload of people or multiple busloads of people with bands, or whether it is sporting teams or whatever it is, there has to be a load in, load out area that ties into the park itself. And so the stadium would literally get built up next to that loading dock. You would have, it's at least 30, maybe 40 feet tall, covered area where that would be $5 to $10 million expense if we had to start from scratch building it. And people will be able to load their teams in, load the drummer in, load in whoever's going to come loading in, and load bus loads of kids in, coming to do whatever. And so we'll have that, we'll save that money. Secondly, there are way over 1,500 in this facility underneath where you are right now. And the cost of building parking spaces is conservatively $20,000 per space for below-grade parking spaces. Not dirt, but if you're doing below-grade stuff, that ends up meaning that's $30 million in parking spaces. And those are for the towers as well as the hotel. But the towers leave at 5. We have them after 5, and they'll be happy to be renting the parking just like it was a city garage. And on weekends, they're not here. So we have $30 million for round numbers in available contiguous joined parking. We have a covered loading area that's minimum 5 million, probably 10 million and whatever. So you're talking $35, $40 million in, nobody's asking for a penny for it to be thrown into the mix to go help this thing work. So that was left out, and that should be something we factor in if we decide to go build it in the middle of a field somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Add $35 million.
Okay, so I have a question about the past and a question about the present. In the past, when the child care center, which you said was in the north part of the thing, it's actually in the south part of the
So
property.
the north half of Block 277. Go ahead.
Okay. And then some other things were eliminated. How were they eliminated? Did General Palmer give them to them, or what were the conditions?
He'd been dead for years.
Okay, so how was it done?
And the city of Colorado Springs, the very same people who have issued the opinion here, were the people, along with the Colorado Springs company, Palmer's actual company, is who actually gave the Learning Center. It's been a little dicier putting our finger on the pulse of the big tower, the Wells Fargo tower, but it certainly was transferred, and it was definitely transferred without deed restriction. When it was transferred to the Learning Center, it was transferred by the Colorado Springs company and by the city of Colorado Springs in direct contravention. Now, these are the two people that have
Okay,
it,
that's
including
right.
Colorado.
And
in
then there
direct
wasn't a
contravention.
reason. Would the reason because of, I mean, how was that done legally?
You know, they can legally do what they want to do. There's an 18,
Well-
which was just argued in the appellate court regarding Strawberry Fields. There are actually statutes on the books. I think in the argument that was just made, I'm going to paraphrase it because I've watched it and the city attorney can speak for themselves. But the paraphrase, you really can't put a greater restriction on a deed than the law allows you to put on a deed at the time you do the deed. I mean, I can say, I'm going to deed my house, when I sell my home, I'm going to put whatever restrictions I want on it, but if the law doesn't allow you to put those restrictions,
Somehow the law.
they're invalid. And so we've really still tried to honor the wishes of the founder of the city, which is a great thing. But the reality is that I think, and by the way, the Kyer decision, which affected North Cheyenne Canyon Park, and it did not affect, I don't think, the precise property within the park that got traded away, is my understanding. The city attorney indicated to us that that wasn't the case, but it is part of the Kyer deed restriction, literally. It was part of the Kyer stipulation the city made. I think at the end of the day, the argument that if you put a deed restriction on something in perpetuity, sometimes it's just not legal to do in perpetuity in a classic example.
So
is
somehow
alcohol.
they found a legal way to get around that.
They were able, when they wanted to find a legal way around that. That would be correct.
Okay, so my second question was, when there's not a sporting event or any event in this space, how will the people become able to use that? Like, they can't jog through it, they can't, like, help me understand that.
Okay, put your tennis shoes on. Come on out. People what kind of tennis shoes you wear? You might wear high top Converse. I don't know if you're wearing one not sure. You probably wear one of them given whatever day. So put whatever shoes you want to put on. At your lunch break, after you eat your salad, or your sandwich, you come and you go on into the park, because it's wide open to the public. Go run yourself some bleachers. Bring a friend out there, throw a
You're just to be
frisbee.
able to walk in.
Yes, it's wide open. It's open to the
That's my
public.
question.
It's a public, it is owned by the public. It will not be owned by the Reagans or us. We don't even care if we operate it. We've already said we don't care if anybody from AEG, who does great jobs putting on concerts and stuff, operate. We don't care if the city parks operates. We don't care who operates it. It has to be open. The difference between what we're proposing and what they've done with some of the other land is this. At the end of the day, everybody in this room, if you're citizens, you're going to own the park. We're not going to own the park. It's going to be publicly owned. And you, with the exception of you've got 20 games a year in the last, 4 hours? Okay, let's 80 hours a year, the Reagans are going to say you got to buy a ticket to get in the park. The rest of the time, which is a whole lot of hours per year, you're going to be able to go in the park, run stadiums, play frisbee, throw the football. Do you know Bear Creek Park? I know you do. You drive down 21st. To me, that's the most actively used field for a park, or one of the most actively used in the
How do you
city.
get your money back if all that happens?
Well, that's a
The
totally
Reagans are gonna get
okay.
their
That's
money back.
a totally different question.
Okay, all right.
And you know something? If they greenlight this project, and if you're opposed to this, we'll be glad to sit down with you, whatever. So of course it has to work financially. But at the end of the day, if it's a paid for park, I got news. Running something that's paid for is a whole lot easier than running something that you got a bunch of debt on. I don't need to tell you that. So we're talking about doing a lease to the switchbacks.
Right.
We're talking about having concerts. My proposal is, because I think we also need to do things to help the homeless, I think on a bunch of events that happen there, we should put a couple of dollar head tax on everybody that comes in that goes straight to a fund that helps actually build places that properly and humanely help educate and house legitimate homeless people that need to be housed. So this should come with some courage and some compassion. So this shouldn't be about just straight economics in that sense, but I'm a pretty libertarian in my thinking. And I think that if what we do is apply good economic principles to this, there will be certainly a lot of additional sale tax that come out of people going to the games and having a good time. There'll be some head tax that we could put on. There are all sorts of ways to do it, and now's not the right time to address that, because we're merely trying to get this past City Council first. But if you think we hadn't thought about it, and I wouldn't tell you that something else that I'm going to say is the one moral issue nobody here has brought up that maybe somebody's going to come up and ask about, because we've been dealing with it. With some really smart people on the Gazette website and a couple other websites, the trees actually do matter. I mean, that's not like world record-setting types of trees, but they're still old, good trees. And I think we have a moral obligation to do a term that we've come up with as part of this to be tree positive. So if you're going to cut down a tree, you better plant 10 trees somewhere that's publicly owned. This can't be a deal where we're merely whacking down stuff, or, even if it's staying in a public park, you can't go getting rid of shrubbery that you just can't do it. I'm a believer in that, and hopefully you believe in that too. And at the end of the day, the city will need to go along with our tree positive proposal, and it's basically a 10-to-1 proposal. You take out a tree, you got to plant 10 more somewhere, and that the citizens own, and that can be useful somewhere. So.
If you don't know where I stand, I'm a fan. I follow the USL, I follow the MLS, and I've gone on several trips to other cities that have downtown stadiums, and I enjoy the atmosphere and the experience. And I don't know how many people have done that here. Could you speak to why it's important to have a downtown stadium location for the work-play type city that we want to have? You know, get that atmosphere with the local restaurants, the bars, and just enjoy the city.
Absolutely, thanks for the question. Yeah, the importance of location is, professional sports is kind of like real estate. It's got to be in the right location. We've seen just in the last year, 3 teams move from locations that they didn't feel were adequate into proper facilities and locations. And from an attendance standpoint, a multiplier of 2.5 to 4 times just in one move. Of course, there's examples that are 10 times in 1 year. The idea that you have to develop a program, a sports program, and have to build year after year, one person, one season ticket member at a time, is actually not accurate. Last year was the first year for, of course, Major League Soccer, not USL, but first year for Atlanta United, and this year, first year, they've broken every attendance record that ever existed in Major League Soccer. And they did that in a very expensive downtown venue in Atlanta. But just goes to show, just to underline, right venue, right location, it's a big deal. And if you don't know, the USL League last year about this time, we shifted from Division III professional to Division II. And at the end of the day, what it means to us is a lot of extra costs and effort. And what the league has been very clear about is if you want to remain competitive in Division II, is that you need to be in a venue that's 8,000 to 10,000 seats. And they set the expectation, the goal for USL teams to be there by 2020. So that this is, again, come along in the last year. And again, the reason why they say this is if you want to be competitive, because guess what? A professional sports franchise is like an expensive car. It is very costly to get going, and especially if you want to be competitive, it takes a lot of effort. And our goal is to have a long-term competitive team in Colorado Springs that the citizens of Colorado Springs are excited about. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's not a lot of local sports enthusiasm in Colorado Springs. We would like to help turn that around, and hopefully we're not the only ones, but we would certainly like to be a catalyst to really start driving just, pride in the city of Colorado Springs. Right? I ran into a lady that's a sponsorship director for Kroenke Sports over the weekend, and up in Denver they look at Colorado Springs as their market. They talk about and they look at Colorado Springs and Colorado businesses and are very interested in seeing marketing dollars from Colorado Springs businesses go to Denver. And I don't know about you, I'd like to see those dollars stay here and generate value and revenue and people that want to be here and live here. I think that's what we want to do going forward. So Annie, the live, work, play environment downtown, soccer, there was a Forbes article just this last week that soccer surpassed, I think, hockey in popularity. Last year, Major League Soccer broke, I believe, hockey in total attendance for 2017. The sport's growing, and the sport's quite international if you didn't know that, right? But the live, work, play, we're one of the youngest sports actually also. 18 to 35 is the target demo for professional soccer. That target demo likes live, work, play environments. A lot of people in that demo don't own cars. A lot of people in that demo would prefer to, whether that's foot traffic, whether that's bicycle, whether that's public transportation. That's that demographic. And so in cities, and of course, as a supporter, we talk about the city of Portland and like Timbers Army, which is a crazy supporters group. But every restaurant and bar in the surrounding area, you can't get in them leading up to games. I mean, it just reinvigorates the whole area around downtown Portland. And you talk about pride in the team. This is unpaid fans that spend hours upon hours generating, tifos, big signs, so they can put on display during the match, solely to support the team and because it's fun. So it's these types of things that we'd like to be a part of and bring to Colorado Springs and start to have some pride in our own city.
Nick and Perry, I very much appreciate the terrific presentation and very thoughtful project that you're looking at. I think another area, or sort of a question as you do it, obviously parks in cities have changed greatly since the 1800s. Things like water and grass, and so I would encourage you as you do your work, and I would encourage our community to look at other cities and how parks, you look at cities like Chicago, even here, the same problem that you've talked about, the loitering that goes on in Acacia Park, and that's the reason right now that we have our winter ice rink there. Obviously, natural grass, the ability to water can't be done, so you'll probably have to put artificial turf. So thank you for your project. I think it's interesting. We also have an opportunity, obviously, work's been going on to continue to enhance the greenway, which is on the other hand, make that an asset, and maybe down the road as you do your facilities, we'll begin to look at some type of rail system from Colorado Springs.
Amen to that.
So thank you for how much you changed, and I appreciate you maybe continuing to look at other examples in other cities. Things are not like it was in the 1800s, and what we define as a park in 1800 is different in today's world. So thank you.
Thank you. And what you're saying is correct about the watering and everything else like that. And that's all been taken into consideration. And so that the park can literally be activated all the time. And we do think that the whole issue of crime in parks, which are synonymous these days in America, it's ubiquitous. It has to do with how much you activate the park. Because criminals, frankly, don't have a big interest in being around lots of non-criminals. It just flies in the face of being a criminal. And we are going to go ahead and do artificial turf here for exactly the reason you're saying. It's sustainability with the field.
I'd like to thank both of you for the project that's being presented to the city. My name is Greg Guilfoyle. I'm a citizen of Colorado Springs. The project to me looks challenging and yet interfaces with our government in a way that I think, as we're starting to see, brings to the level of responsibility of our government on an issue that is maybe typical for some things that I think citizens need to be represented properly on. I'm just a guy, I'm just a citizen. But I went downtown because, like Nick was saying, I was curious as what downtown business people thought of. The gentleman from the Visitor's Bureau was here earlier. I don't know how many millions of dollars of business we have downtown, quite a few million, and they struggle. I was a businessman. I never had to have an office and pay $2,000 or $3,000 a month in rent. Thankfully, I was a contractor. But I walked up and down downtown, probably 50 businesses, got their cards. I got 49 yeses for what you're doing.
My name is Jim Mesite. I've been here in the area a total of 31 years, starting with the Army, as many folks have done. My first response to this, even as a switchbacks season ticket holder going into the third year, my first response to this was the preservation against it. I have 5 questions. I'm going to give everybody a break and only ask 3.
Ask all about it.
Give it to somebody else.
Does on the preservation mode, does the project assume or include the preservation of the depot building and development of that as, anybody who's been here longer than 10 years, I think would join me in saying how sad we were when the restaurant Giuseppe's closed. So does the project include preservation of that building and facility?
Let's take them one at a time. Yes, the Oaks family, who's just a really great family here in town, it has owned Giuseppe's for years. In the 70s, an addition was built, which is not part of the historical Giuseppe's building. It's a stick-built, nice, but nothing anybody's going to go crazy over something changing with. On the very first day Nick contacted me about doing this thing in the park, I said, this will probably only work if we can pull it all together with the C4C money, which requires this indoor piece. Started sketching stuff out on napkins, sitting over at the Famous, and literally got Charles Oakes on the phone, had met with him within a day or two, and within several weeks, he has a large family. We had buy-in from that family to take the non-historic part and use that if it was needed. Their preference, I think, is that it not be needed. But they were willing to say, we will pitch in and participate on the non-historic part, and I would never remotely ask them, whatever else we are, we're real preservationists. So to answer your question, the old Giuseppe stays no matter what, even if the indoor part goes on that.
Thank you. This is a quick yes or no. Does the City of Champions money, which of course is a key part of this whole deal, would that completely cover the construction of the stadium and all the improvements?
Depends on which way the indoor part of it ends up working. We have one plan working that has not been presented today because we don't have authority to present it, but we should know that within 6 weeks. It will not cover it all if the indoor part is either on the Oaks property or on the where the Children's Learning Center is. It would be enough, we think, with no additional money to cover the stadium between sponsors and whatnot, if we get option 3, which we frankly think is the most likely option. If not, let me just address, if it turns out if it's option 1 or option 2, no general fund money, no extra tax money under any circumstance. We already have this thing called LART, which is where when people come from out of town, they stay in the hotels, they pay the extra fees, they rent cars, they pay the extra fees. We're hoping to work a deal out where some very, very small portion of LART would be used to cover the already existing money not paid by local citizens, paid by out-of-town people.
So there'll be no requirement for additional private investment, like from yourself?
No, we're probably going to have to put in some money, and I've already told you, we own the dock where this is, and that's a 5 to 2. We're going to have a little bit of an investment, no matter what, to put it mildly. And we already have sponsors that are kind of lining up, wanting to participate in the deal. And some of it will be sponsor-oriented because people like having their names on stadiums, as you probably noticed. So it won't require any more general fund money, and it won't require any new taxes on you money, or we're not going to try and do the deal. Simple as that. I'm getting back to being libertarian in my approach. I'm really libertarian in my approach.
We appreciate the comprehensive answers, but in respect to everybody else, if you want to answer these in 2 sentences, that's fine. What's a critical date, drop-dead date, when this has to be decided? I guess the decision is in
December 13th or December 16th, I forget.
wow.
Not just decided, we have to have the thing done, figured out, organized, and the 13th, and we have to have broken ground and be doing it. So there's so much work to be done between now and then.
Well, I mean, what about the decision to go forward, to start that?
The city, we wish we had gotten that done last year. We're to the point this year where there's no time to be wasted. If there's any time wasted, this won't work.
The decision is the city's, though. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And one last one. A vision in my mind, and looking at the stadium, I had an immediate vision of a mile mile-long line getting on and off of I-25. So are there any plans for what kind of road improvements might be made for traffic flow?
I think that they've made some pretty significant egress and ingress between Cimarron and Bijou. Whatever, I doubt seriously for this particular thing there'll be any additional ones made. Look, just from a standpoint of parking and whatnot, if I may, I do think in the near term, it's going to be what Nick said, an awful lot more people, especially the kind of people that go to these things, tend to use ride services from Uber to Lyft. They also, if the downtown ends up continuing to develop apartments like it's developing like crazy, you'll have a lot of walking traffic. And I think that we're being ridiculous if we don't take into account that we're about an inch away from driverless cars. So this is kind of like worrying about if we have enough hitching posts for the horses, in my opinion. I think this will end up being a moot issue soon, but if it weren't going to be a moot issue, it has changed the dynamic of driving.
This thing is nowhere near telling us. Sorry. Perry and Nick, I just want to say a couple of quick things. First of all, thank you for the presentation. For anybody in the room who may not have seen my big old self, my name is John Eddy. I have worked for the following sports organizations: the Sky Sox, United States Air Force Academy Basketball, United States Air Force Academy Hockey, UCCS Basketball, UCCS Volleyball, RMAC Sports, including the Altitude Sports Game of the Week. I've been all over this great state covering sports. Been working at the Switchback Stadium, Widener Field, just about every sport you can count. I moved to Colorado Springs 10 years ago. I love sports in this city. And first and foremost, thank you for what you're doing to try to enhance the quality of sports, events, and the quality of life people here in the city and downtown. What you're doing, the motivation above and beyond what is necessary, what is comfortable, is admirable. First of all, we need to address the question because we're looking at a lot of history of what is best for this city. We're one of the top 50 media markets in this country, and we don't have a convention center. We don't have a convention center. We can use this stadium for so many things. Perry, your hotel, being adjacent to this public park, can be used for so many things. It can be used to attract tourism from so many places. We no longer have to be Denver Junior with a place to bring businesses, with a place to be a kickoff for skiing, with a place to be a kickoff for so many things. Garden of the Gods is our greatest resource, our greatest natural resource. Why are we not bringing people for conventions? It's because we do not have a place to do so. With a place like that, we can do it. I don't know who saw the Broadmoor World Arena article in the Gazette, the Broadmoor World Arena section in the Gazette on Sunday, which talked about in 1998, a facility which was never supposed to happen. It was never meant to happen. And 20 years later, we are talking about the success and the monument that place is. And you know what that place is? It's on the outskirts. It is not downtown. It's not in the lifeblood of this city. It's not in a place where General Palmer himself said, I want to have my hotel. We can boost the downtown economy, and myself, running my own production company, owning the 719 Day Brewfest, putting on 5 concerts this spring so that we don't have to drive up I-25 and go to concerts, damn it. Working with the Empty Stocking Fund to raise over $1 million every single year to help people in our community. This is a place for us to do it. The time is now for us to rally behind these people who are working hard. Gentlemen, the moral of what I'm saying is thank you.
Hey, the moral of what you're saying is we need to change the city charter. I think that's what it's in, Bob. You can tell us. Somehow or another, it managed to get into the city charter several years ago that the city council cannot even talk about a convention center. So I think They want, we should change that immediately, and we cannot get a convention center, independent of this, we cannot get one vast enough in this city, because there's not one city in North America this size that does not have a convention center. That's absurd.
In the top 50 media markets in this country, why are we not conversing just like this to bring people here? The more money that comes into our economy, the better off that we are, the better off we as citizens are. So why aren't we doing something about it? Why aren't we rallying? Why aren't all of us going on social media and answering the questions that people are posing? We have the power to do that. So let's do it. And thank you for starting the conversation. Kudos, gentlemen. Thank you.
First of all, a comment. My name is Kathy Kleinsmith. I've lived here for over 30 years. I don't feel like I belong in this city because the emphasis is always on sports. I'm not a sports fan. And I've always said the day that teachers get paid the same salary as football players get paid, that's the day I'll go to a football game. From what I understand, your stadium is going to hold 10,000 people, am I correct? Around that?
Yes.
8 to 10, yeah.
8. How many?
8 to 10.
8 to 10.
Where the hell are you going to put all those cars?
I tried to address that. We have approximately 1,500 parking spaces here.
1,500 and you've got 10,000 people down here?
I'm not saying I'm right, but I am saying that we have approximately 1,500 parking spaces here in town and here in this building. And there are more public parking places within 4 blocks of here than any other place. And they total thousands, not just a couple, they total 8,000. And most people that come to these events don't travel one car or whatever. And I guarantee you, from having been to sporting events in other cities recently, a lot of people do not go park. They catch ride-lift services like Uber and Lyft. And your point's super well taken that parking could be an issue, but that's the best explanation, and it's not a perfect one. And I wish I was able to give it. I apologize for that.
Sky Sox had 2,200 for 8,000 and it worked.
But before, Barry, before I believe anything would be granted in the way of construction, the plan that has to be done has to include parking for the entity you're building. So they discussed what, going down?
So he just said Sky Sox has 2,200 it works in that stadium. Anyway, we hope to be able to address parking in a way that'll be satisfactory to you. But your point really is more. Your more important point is that teachers are underpaid, and I think we can all agree with that. I didn't say it wasn't in parking. If you're saying I did, then you're not listening.
Oh, I thought you said that.
Thank you.
That's big.
And for the switchbacks too, we have 700 spots for a 5,000 seat stadium. Just
And where do they go?
where do the parking spots go?
These
So
people,
where do people go then?
they come in cars of 4 and 5 and 6 people per car.
Yeah, Uber. You know, I
It's an Uber, it's a Lyft issue.
And I can't walk a long distance.
Well, we'll try to figure a way to accommodate that.
Well, there has to be a there will have to be.
Yeah, there will certainly be required ADA parking, and we're certainly amenable to trying to sort through making certain that people with disabilities are able to get in more easily than maybe even the law requires.
This is kind of scattered here. This will be kind of scattered here, but you're looking at somebody.
Move closer. Closer. There you
You're
go.
looking at somebody who at the age of 2 was dropped off at that daycare center. It was for low-rent people who couldn't afford to have the help. So I'd like to see it stay if possible.
It will stay. If it turns out that that area is used, we've been talking with the daycare center, and not only will it stay, it will be radically improved according to their wishes. It'll be expanded, and we won't even think of using that space unless we do it in conjunction with the daycare center.
Okay, now, you have partially convinced me. I want to mention though that, like soccer itself, the Rapids had a 5.9% decrease in attendance this last year. 13 other major teams had a decrease in attendance in major cities. Now, it may fly here, but I'm one who remembers the Denver Bears. I remember the Colorado Rockies in Memorial Park, and I remember Rocky Hockey. So I know that sports teams come and sports teams go. So you said 40 or 80 hours. That doesn't include practice time. I assume you will be practicing in the same place.
And that'll be open to the public when it is, and people will be.
But it's not a park, it's something to view.
And that's left to be determined. Currently, we do not practice at our primary venue.
You also listed, was it 12 or 16 different sports venues that you want to put into this park? So the 80 hours is by far nowhere near what the park will be used.
A lot of the brands that were shot up on the screen, a lot of those are in reference to the event center. And not that there is not going to be opportunity and desire to program the stadium as well, but from the reason, and Bob can speak to this better than anybody else, but the Sports and Event Center was there and included in this project particularly to bring sports tourism to Colorado Springs. And so think Sports Center, the Event Center, sorry, with a lot of those brands and programming.
Now, the event center is part of this that they showed up there?
Yes.
Oh,
No, sorry. As a matter of fact, it probably plays one of the larger parts because it's volleyball, it's basketball, it's a 60,000 square foot. It just doesn't happen to require the city approval to be able to do from a standpoint of doing an Antler park. That's why the focus is been on the stadium. It'll be paid for with either C4C money or a combination of that and private money. It won't be any general fund money, and it won't be any tax money, or we won't be doing it.
We heard the same thing about the museum, that it would not be any general fund money or tax money.
Well, I'm not sure. I know that I'm putting money into that personally, and I wish it was coming out of the general fund versus my pocket.
They took $800,000. They traded for the park. Yes, it is.
Do you have a slide that shows them where the facility is for the indoor part of it?
I'm not sure about the, Bob, you might know the answer. Is there general fund money that's gone into the Olympic Museum?
Into the museum? No. The city council voted to trade and fund the museum the last day. Because I was there when they promised us that they would not do that. And the city council member went into the back room and he exchanged a trade to give him the rest of the money to build the museum in exchange for the amphitheater out on the west.
Yeah, LARP money, once again, is lodging and resort tax money that already exists. It just is a matter of how they decide to use the LARP money. But I can tell you, from our project, for our project, we're the, I don't know how many people are involved in that. There are 2 people involved in this. We're not going to take any general fund money, and we're not going to raise any taxes. It's as simple as that, or we're not going to do the deal.
I want to mention one other thing, that in the 1970s, Colorado Springs was going to tear down the courthouse, the old courthouse. And they instead turned it over or sold it or whatever. Pioneer Museum was going to be in the old library and the old Pioneer Museum. They're going to use that. As near as I know, as near as I can remember, the reason they did it is the way they did it is if they tore it down, it would revert to park.
Not positive what the point of that is.
The point is that you may say that, okay, they did this in the park and they did that in the park, and maybe the area around here, they just turned over I don't know.
Oh, they did.
But
We have the deeds.
They still, instead of just giving you the entire area, they left a park. They left a part of a park, just like they did, was it the Alamo Park?
Yeah.
They left a part of a park. They couldn't develop the entire area and didn't develop the entire area. And that was in the 70s.
Well, this is gonna stay a park. You'll be able to use it if you want to, and whatever else in terms of preservation. I have a pretty good history of trying to be a preservationist. We managed to save the mining exchange building, which was built in 1900, and some other developers might have torn it down. We didn't do that. We renovated it. We bought the building where the famous is, built in 1889, and we've completely renovated it, made it energy efficient and nice. And I'm a real preservationist. We don't know each other, but it's fair to say that I'm not going to be part of doing the kind of stuff that you talked about.
Doing the Burns Theater.
Doing the what?
The Burns Theater.
If I'd been around back in the day, we'd probably have a lot more
We
old
tried to
buildings.
I tried
Anybody that knows me knows that.
You know, I've watched this town since 1953, 55, when I could actually pay attention to anything. And I
Horrible
watched,
what they got rid of. Horrible what they got rid of.
I know, I watched them tear down the downtown in an urban renewal. Then they tore it down again for another urban renewal. They tore down Chase Stone Center for an urban renewal. Everywhere you look, they're tearing down stuff for an urban renewal instead of just fixing it. The park behind us could be fixed.
This is fixing it, and it'll be very cool, we think. And if you think it's not going to be really cool, we understand. But we're really trying to make it really cool for all the citizens.
Are you willing to let it go to a vote?
Pardon?
Are you willing to let it go to a vote of the people?
It will never get done if it does that, because that will take so long to do. Have you noticed how long it takes for something to go to a vote of the people around here? We proposed this back in May of this past year. If it had gone to a vote of the people by the end of this past year, we could still be maybe shovel ready in December. As it is, we're going to have to strip a whole lot of gears to get it done. I mean, a whole lot of gears to get it done. We hope to some extent that we've convinced you it might not be as horrible an idea as you initially thought. But I can tell you, we'll be good stewards of what we're doing with it. And we'll make sure that the public gets a lot out of it.
The city will own it.
The city will own every square inch of it, and I'm not trying to run it. I don't care if I sell one soda pop out of it. It's gonna stay a public park. You can apply to run it. This is a public park, and it will stay a public park.
Okay, thank you.
And I might just comment in too, historically, General Palmer actually donated a considerable amount of money to build out the seating at Washburn Field. You probably remember that slide of Monument Valley Park. And Washburn Field at one point was a much larger stadium. And it kind of ties into this active versus passive element. They looked at Colorado College and Antler Park and Monument Valley Park all together. And actually, you know, Van Diest, the guy that was Palmer's agent, he proposed a 30,000 seat stadium at Washburn Field at one time. So this isn't brand new. This isn't the first time somebody's thought about something like this down in this region. We just think it's a great idea.
I think that if General Palmer was against alcohol, he certainly would not approve of mainlining heroin. That's my husband, go for it.
No, thank you. I really don't like to get up in the limelight, but I tell you what, I've listened to the things tonight, it just kind of bubbles my bubble. And I can't understand why common sense is so uncommon on why we're trying to do something positive and go against the negative. We've got a problem down in the park. We all know the problem down in the park. We know the drugs. We know the homelessness. You're trying to take care of all the things that we're trying to fix on a daily basis, which is the homeless, the heroin, the drugs, and build something for the kids that this town has neglected for years and years and years. I came to this town in September of 1899 as a small little businessman. Did I say 1899? drugged, ganged, and no one trying to take care of the situation. And here we got a chance to do something forward to make us better than anybody else. And we're sitting here going, what's it going to cost? Who's making the money? Is Perry putting 15 cents in his pocket over this deal? I don't know. Do you see any notes in my pocket? I never investigated this whole situation. But I'm thinking positive, and I'm telling myself, why is common sense so positive tonight? People are looking at, can I argue about parking? Can I argue about the cost of a Coke? Can I argue about, is your kid going to pay 10 cents more than our kid? Let's put it all together as a community and say to ourselves, let's get together, guys. Where in the hell are we coming from? Are you trying to be, you're negative and you're positive, or I don't like him and I don't like you? This is the first opportunity that we've had to go forward, and we're trying to go negative. I have the luxury of going to Perry's restaurant every now and then, and guess what? I take a cab or an Uber because there's no damn place to park in Colorado Springs. Can you do that in Chicago? Can you do that in New York? Where else can you do that in this size of a community that there's no place to park on a Friday or Saturday night? This town is improving, but the older, good old boys are going away, and new blood is coming in and taking care of this community the way it's supposed to have been taken care of. Like Palmer said, let's advance, let's grow, and let's have fun. Live life like life is supposed to be lived.
A couple things. One, I've worked for the Antlers now for probably 3 or 4 years, and one of our main complaints, I'm going to say, from our customers, our guests, isn't about the hotel, isn't about our great customer service, it's not about the food, it's about the safety out back. And it's a shame that we have such a beautiful city, a beautiful park in the back, and our guests, can't even take their kids for a walk down to the park, can't even take their dog for a walk through the grass because they may step on a needle, or if there's even worse. And on the other thing I'd like to say too is, maybe I'm the only family man here as far as I know it's talked about kids. I know you brought it up quickly. I have nowhere to bring my kids. You know, my kids love to come to daddy, likes to come with daddy to work. I have no place to take them. And so something like this is great. They can make use of the field, who knows, playgrounds. You know, this is a great idea, not only for as a family man, but also as an employee here at the Antlers Hotel. It's going to give our guests something to look for, something to look forward to come here. I'm nothing but excited about this, and you have my full support. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
My name's Laurel Ann, and I've been a Switchbacks fan since the inaugural season. And one of the things I really want to bring up, the Switchbacks is a USL Division II league team, and so most of the men that play on that team are paid at about what teachers make. They're not this phenomenal, amazing, tier 1 professional team. And so in my opinion, we as a city can do something amazing and give young men who have this hope and dream to go out and make something of themselves. We can support them. And right now with the Widener Stadium where it's at, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful and the view is gorgeous. I don't know if you guys have been there, but the Reagans have done an amazing job of improving it out there, and I fully put my trust in them to make this something that's completely amazing too. And right now, we as a city and in the community where the Widener Stadium is, it's not supporting the team as much as they can. They need to make a lot more improvements to keep it at a Division II level. And right now, they don't have the ability to do that at the city park where it is right now. This, however, is going to bring us up to standard with the rest of the teams in the USL. And I think that is something we as a city need to get behind. But that's not it. This is not going to be a soccer-specific stadium, whereas the stadium out at Widener is right now. So this field is going to have multiple uses for multiple different families, multiple different demographics, and I think that we as a city need to come behind and support this. I wasn't for this when I first saw it because I am one that normally just says no right away. But the more that I looked into this, the City for Champions money is not going to be allocated properly to the museum, the Olympic Museum, and the World War II Aviation Museum if we don't go forward with this. So our city stands to lose not only the $28 million for this project, but also a lot of other money for the other projects. And that is just ignorant to stand back and say we can't take this money. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I do think that we as a city need to stand up. And if you have any questions, I want you to go ahead and go to Nick. He spent over an hour with me going over the details, and I really thank you for that. I really appreciate how much time and energy and effort you've put into doing your research and into properly pushing the project forward because our city does need it. Thank you.
Nick, Harry. I'm Trevor Deerdorf. I've been a downtown business owner for almost 20 years. And I was early on very interested in City for Champions, checked it out, even went and spoke on behalf of our city, the RTA, trying to get it to happen. Much to the chagrin of a lot of local conservatives who think that if there's a demand for something like this, the market will provide for it. I think that we need to invest in our city. I think there's a whole lot more waste at the federal and state level and then locally. We need to invest in our city if we're going to compete with other cities for people, jobs, so on and so forth. What I'm most curious about, though, is this wasn't the original intended address for the sports and event venue. Has that completely died, or is that a competing project now? What's the status of what might happen to the west?
I think even the museum changed addresses as well. I think it was right across, just on the other side of Colorado, is my understanding, was the original location. But I don't know, there's a whole story about who actually owns the property, and is that even possible, and a lot of conversations. But right now, this is the only project that's on the table. This is the only project, the only sports and event center piece that's been created, and a concept that can work in a lot of ways because of the shared usages that the hotel provides. Just
infrastructure. Yeah. But Trevor, there's been years to put something together, and when we actually had our first meeting and got the first plans, I was with Ed Reagan, and in fact Bob was there. The same day we were meeting, getting the deal, basically, it said, hey, this is almost an impossible deal. The mayor was announcing that this was not even going to go forward, and there's just something wrong about flushing $28 million down the road. I don't know how rich anybody else is in here, but I think that's insanity, and for any city to want to do that. So Nick came up with this idea. I didn't come up with it. I just came up with the idea of, hey, we got to go ahead and tie an indoor event center with it. Let's try and save the money on behalf of the city. And I don't think there's ever been another firm proposal anywhere for it to go besides this, and this was literally done kind of as a Hail Mary 11th hour pass, and we have it completely put together. We can go do this, and we should go do this.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know diddly about soccer. I went to a Catholic girls' finishing school, and I don't know about football. I don't know about soccer. I know about $27 million is a lot of money. Because I am rich, and you don't piss that away just because of politics and because of ego, male ego. I will tell you that what I do know about is that gentleman standing right there. He is a visionary. He is a man of integrity. He does what he says he's going to do. And he has come here, thankfully, because there are so few in this city. I've been here 33 years and seen nothing happen until he came. I respect him, I trust him with uncounted cash. Who can you say that about? You can't. That man right there, if he says he's going to do it, he says he's going to do it right. And he says he's going to do it to budget and contribute $30 million of his own assets to the project. I mean, give me a break. What else can you ask for in a city? There are very few, if any, Harry Sanders Jr. I tell you that's how I feel from my heart, because if you want the truth, that's all you're going to get from me.
Okay, so just curious while we're at it, if it's not going to go up for a public vote, what can we as a community do to help you guys and help this project?
Here, here. Good question. Here,
This should be a thumbs up or thumb down vote with the city council, just like they voted on Strawberry Fields, which I think they have the right to do based upon the opinions that I've read. If it turns out that they vote in a way that you don't like, then vote them out of office. If they vote in a way you like, then leave them in office. If the people at the top don't support this, vote them out of office. If they do support it and you like it, keep them in office. At the end of the day, it's America, and people we elect have a right and an obligation to not shirk their responsibility, and they need to stand up, and they need to do a thumbs up, a thumbs down vote on things. They need to have the courage and the conviction to do that, and not, lick their finger and stick it in the wind and see which way the wind's blowing. And this is a real no-brainer deal to not throw away all this money and to cure a major problem at the same time that you're not throwing away the money. So I think that's really all it boils down to. So we hope that they end up getting authority from the city attorney to go do a thumbs up, thumb down vote, because time is not on our side to be able to do the recommendation. Let's take it to the courts, let's get a decision, let's get a public vote. The deal's dead if that happens, I can tell you. We're pulling out, and I'm sorry to be saying that to you, but I'm not going to swim upstream against all the powers that be. I think it'd be smarter to save it for the next election.
But his question was a good one, Barry, in terms of, there's not going to be a vote, in terms of, recommend they talk to the council then.
Oh, I'm going to recommend everybody here get hold of every politician they know. I think that all roads go through.
What would be the avenues for them to say yes, and then how they can get to those people to say yes?
I think, I'm so stupid, I didn't even catch on to the political question. Reach out to your representative and to all representatives, and reach out to the mayor's office, and reach out to anybody you can and say you support this.
Get on social media and express support. Email them.
Yeah, email them. I think they still get emails.
Yeah, I think Wednesday is the closed session. So between now and early Wednesday, if you want to be reaching out, if you want to be contacting,
Tomorrow.
letting them know.
Tomorrow's a big day.
Yeah.
$28 million day.
My name is Guy Britt, and I kind of hesitate to comment because I just moved here about a month ago. But I hear a lot of feedback from you guys about the legal opinion. There's one single legal opinion. However, there's a lot of professionals in the city of Colorado Springs, urban planning, economic development, people like that. I haven't heard anything about those guys. As a professional in this industry, I see this as one of the simplest, common sense solutions to multiple city problems with a significant amount of funds being put to it. I haven't found not one single bad idea. What does urban planning say about it? What does city planning say about it? What does economic development say about it?
That's a great question, and we're hoping that we thought we had run all the traps before we got the legal opinion. We literally have met with everybody from the USOC who really matters, sports corp who really matters. We met with city council people that are really parks people that really matter, and we had 100% buy-in. and then hit a roadblock with an advisory opinion. We're talking about an advisory opinion. So we're hoping that that opinion was written at a time before we have shed as much light on it as we've now shed on it. We hope that the city attorney will take all of the new information that has been presented, and we'll see if the boxes can be checked differently. We're really hoping that that happens. And if that happens, hopefully on Wednesday in the executive session, they'll say, you can take a vote on this, vote on it. If people don't like your vote, they'll vote you out of office. But when I tell you that I met with people like crazy that I expected would be negative, and we got zero negative.
Been there, done that. I get it.
It's kind of shocking that we're even having to have the discussion.
Hi, my name is Clinton. I'm a soccer fan. I've lived here for just a couple years now. One of the reasons I don't make it to Switchbacks games as much as I would like is because the stadium is so far away from where I live. So right after I moved here, the first game I went to, I was already thinking, like, we really need a stadium downtown. So ultimately, I really like a lot of the aspects of the plan, but I do have a couple concerns, and really the only one I want to ask you to speak on is about potential size issues. I'm of the belief that soccer is growing in this country, and it's actually growing very rapidly. Especially everyone who moves into this country is bringing soccer with them. We have a large Latino population in this community that loves soccer, and I think that with the men's team not making the World Cup this year, there's a lot of changes that are going to be happening in the near future to soccer in this nation. There's a new presidential bid coming up for USSF, and so my concern and my question is about seating, actually. I think that, and maybe this is getting a little too specific or thinking too far in advance, but I think promotion and relegation is going to be something that happens sooner rather than later. And if that were to happen and the USL continues to be a Division II, to be at the Division II level, and if we were to ever make it into top tier football here in this country, we could be looking at bringing pretty large crowds to see soccer games here. Again, this is probably years down the road, but just one of my concerns is about the future, and if there's room to grow this and to add more seating, because it seems like a pretty cramped space. So I was wondering if you could address that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yep. Sure where to start though. At the end of the day, for us, location is the most important part of the equation. Just like buying a house, location is the key. That's what's going to drive the traffic. That's what's going to be the positive impact on your neighboring businesses. That's going to help support the team and what you're doing. If you know, could we build more seats out on East in a big open plain and you know, do this on a larger scale? Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's a lot of models in American soccer that put big stadiums way out east because land's cheap and it doesn't generate the type of interest.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing that.
Let me address what you're saying, because I think I understood the question. First of all, we have a sort of plan B if we end up taking over the area where the daycare center is, for instance, and let's assume that that part goes somewhere else. This could be a 14 to 16,000 seater stadium, number one.
Okay.
So that starts to get up into a pretty nice range.
Yeah.
It gets up into the range actually where if it turns out Air Force decided they want to play a couple of games a year there, they could do it because they have a smaller attendance than that. Additionally, I would look upon this as let's hope that we have the problem, we don't have enough soccer seats, and if that's the case, this will be a smaller minor league stadium, and we will build another bigger stadium somewhere, because I don't know one really significant city in the United States today that is relegated to one anything having to do with sports. But you got to start somewhere, but your point's well taken, and the reality is we have been in talks with people about a design that gets this up to 14 to 15, 14 to maybe even 16,000 seats.
Thank you. And I will share, because you did mention U.S. soccer, you mentioned, maybe touched on FIFA a little bit, but we got a call, and I know a few different departments in the city got a call just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. The U.S. is primed and poised to win the 2026 World Cup, and Denver is one of the cities that is going after to host those games. That they have a 70,000 seat, close to 70,000 seats, and they can do that.
Thank y'all all for comments, for staying so late. Really appreciate it.
But they contacted Colorado Springs, and they said, we'd like you guys to join in with us and actually host one of the international teams as they come here. But you know, venues is a problem, and so we had a number of conversations, but just to let you know, when you talk about the growth, when you talk about new opportunities, here we are talking about 2026 World Cup in like the same week that we're talking about our downtown stadium, which is, you know, pretty cool, actually.
Good evening, my name is Karen Street. I currently own a sports media brand, Sports by She, which originated to build the culture, sports culture here in Colorado Springs. I'm also a member, player, coach of the Rocky Mountain Thundercats, which is a women's semi-pro football team here. My question to you is, once you guys have the green light to build this, how do organizations that do exist in the city that are not supported by the city gain that support and also use the facility? For example, my football team, I'm one of 2 women, original women football players in the whole state of Colorado. Denver now has 4 teams, and the first team in Denver originated from players that I played with here in Colorado Springs. Of course, we're talking about a much larger city where they are supported. We don't. We're continuing every season to look for a facility that we can
You will
play
be
at.
able to play in this stadium.
How do we connect to establish that?
We're pretty accessible.
Well, that's my question.
If this gets built, it'll be really easy for you to reach out and say, we'd like to get on the program, use the stadium. It's a public stadium, you'll be able to use it.
It would be leased through the city, right? Just as the Switchbacks are leasing it for their games, her organization would set up with the city's lease facility, correct?
Yeah, all those processes, I haven't been created right now, but I can tell you, go talk to Joe.
Don't even have permission yet.
Yeah.
Right, I understand that. That's why I said once the green light gets to build the
Yeah, they will develop all those processes, procedures, and you know, you still have, you know, cleanup and trash, and you have security, and you have concessions. There are costs associated with putting on an event, but the goal is to have the event here.
Absolutely, I understand that. I'm actually part of the operations, and we pay to play. So we actually pay for the facilities, we pay for the security, we pay for the concessions. And actually, this team was taken over by the women, the players of the team, and we are transitioning into a nonprofit organization. But that's, the slide that you put up there was this well-established, big sports teams and organizations. What about the...
You'll be able to book it if you want to go play flag football team, we can flag football with your kids. I mean, it's a public stadium.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Well, that information, how do we keep track of the progress and who eventually operates the whole facility?
That's still up in the air. We're wide open to whoever operates. We can operate it if they need us to, but we're not doing this to get an operating business of the stadium. We're glad to do it if it's needed. We operate a bunch of junk already. But anyway, it's premature to answer that, but you can always reach out to the hotel here and ask, you know, can you tell tell me once, as soon as it's built.
recording?
It'll be a real easy deal to go online and figure that out.
Is there a website now or social media now that we can track the progress of this project?
You might be able to do it through 365grandclub.com. I think there's a web.
I'm familiar with that, actually. 365 Grand Club.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank the people that are leaving and the people that stayed this long. Bob, thank you so much. This is my very favorite person in the whole crazy city that's helped get more stuff done than anybody, Bob Coe. Can we give him a big round of applause? Really appreciate it. If there are no other questions, we can adjourn to the bar. Or the pizza place. Thank you all so much.